Welcome to the Entrepreneurial Mindset Podcast, brought to you by the Opportunities for Youth in Africa, or OYA program. OYA is a joint initiative of the UN Industrial Development Organization, UNIDO, and the Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO, featuring interviews with inspiring young entrepreneurs from across the African continent. This podcast is about seizing opportunities, overcoming and learning from setbacks, and succeeding in a variety of settings to fulfill your business ambitions. And now, over to our host.
Greetings, everyone, and thanks again for joining us on this episode of Entrepreneur Mindset for the Opportunities for Young Africans podcast. And today's episode is exciting because we are joined by the CEO, a tribalizer, outlier. She's also the co-founder of Melanin Kapital and an impact investor. Mélanie, thanks again for joining us on today's episode. I hope you're doing great.
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm so happy to be with you and having this discussion with you today.
Has in any way the coronavirus destabilized you? I just feel like there's so much happening. You know, we take 20 steps ahead, 50 steps back. It's just, back and forth.
To be honest, the coronavirus is, we are Corona baby at Melanin Kapital, I think. So we actually started with COVID, where I incorporated Melanin Kapital in Frankfurt in 2020, January. And then in February, we were in lockdown. So literally, we had to live with COVID, and it helped us to not think traditionally of how we can support small businesses in Africa to be financed and to find digital solutions right away. So we actually had to become a tech company from the get-go. So yes, for now, it's not disturbing us. For us, it's business as usual. And even the more the lockdowns continues, the more people actually need our
that's quite interesting, because I was thinking, maybe I'll start with asking you about Melanin. But, you mentioned how the pandemic changed your entire business model, I'm assuming. And when you listen to, I've been reading a lot of papers, some that have said, the pandemic has born a lot of entrepreneurs, or a lot of people have actually left jobs that paid thousands of dollars. But a lot of companies have been forced to innovate and think beyond what they actually do. And when you say to me, you were born your company was incorporated 2 months or a month before the pandemic. Anybody could have said, or you could have said, what, this is it, we can't do anything. But you were able to go ahead. I mean, just give me something more about that. It's really exciting.
Yes. So basically, for us, when we saw the COVID pandemic coming, we were basing our idea on how can we encourage African investors, especially African from the diaspora, to invest back home in African entrepreneurs. And, the whole industry of investment is based on one-on-one contact due diligences, right? So even myself working as an impact investor from Paris or Frankfurt, I've always had to travel and then come for a week into the company I wanted to invest in and discuss with the CEOs and the team directly. But then when you have COVID-19 coming up, you cannot do those kind of things.
Absolutely.
So for all our idea, we had to think about how can we build this bridge and this trust so that we can encourage investors from the diaspora or in Europe to continue investing back home, but using a different infrastructure in a different way. So it's basically how can you even disrupt the entire industry of investment. And that was very exciting for us, to be honest, because it was a bit of an untapped market. A lot of other platforms have tried, but maybe have failed because the trust was not there. And really, to be able to invest, you need that trust. Finance is all about, are you trusting that the person you're giving your money to is actually able to pay you back. So this was a big challenge. And yeah, we're still, of course, working heavily on making sure that the 400 entrepreneurs that we have on our platform today are trustworthy and are credible in front of banks or other investors.
Listen, that is really interesting because, I mean, you could have just jumped out and said, let's wait for a year for COVID to settle in and, you know, be able to travel across, but you had to work around it. And for me, I find it exciting. I just don't want the listeners to feel like, okay, which company is this? I need to understand. So just give us an idea of what exactly you do at Melanin Kapital.
Absolutely. So Melanin Kapital aims at becoming the first impact investment bank for Africans and Africans in the diaspora. So in short, kind of the next digital Goldman Sachs, but fully focused on Africans. And what we're trying to do is basically digitizing the investment banking industry, starting with fundraising. So at the moment, this is the technology that we have widely developed, a fundraising tool for entrepreneurs to raise money from investors and banks. The second pillar that we are looking at is digitizing investments, and the third one, wealth management. But currently we have especially worked on a fundraising tool for very small businesses, so really adapting even investment banking services to the reality of the private sector in Africa, which is composed of small businesses, informal for most of them. And the idea is to help them get formalized, become investment ready, and raise money from investors, which we guarantee through our platform and through our African Guarantee Fund partner. So that's basically the whole idea, is how can we adapt the financial industry and make it work for African realities, basically, currently. And we are working with Absa Bank, which I guess you know from Kenya. It's formerly Barclays, Kenya. And the first pilot that we're doing with them is to finance 307 women entrepreneurs through our platform, basically. So showcasing that this process of formalizing and making those entrepreneurs investment ready allows the bank to provide them with access to credit at better conditions.
Wow, that, the word, as you were saying, telling us more, the word guarantee stood out for me. I was like, okay, this is more like an assurance that, we're going to help you get the money fundraising. And I'm so glad we're speaking to you after speaking to two agripreneurs, people who have built businesses in the agriculture sector, which you and I understand is mostly informal. And one of the things that came out for my conversations with them, and I'm sure the listeners also will hear that, has been raising money or raising capital, like getting that financing to start off. And especially in a sector like agriculture, you need so much because it's an informal sector. It's changing seasons. It's a lot. And, these guys want to do work, but then getting the funding is usually the problem. My question is, of course, this is amazing having 307 already women, in a partnership with the bank and raising all these money investments, digitizing. It's awesome. But Melanin, there are lots of ideas out there. I am telling you, I have 50 of them at this particular point. And I could say, I need investors for this particular idea. But what makes some of these businesses stand out? And I'm asking on behalf of the people we've already interviewed on the podcast who say, financing and capital. And now we're speaking to somebody who helps raise the financing and the capital. What makes really great ideas bankable? I don't know if that's the word. Why would an investor put money in an idea?
No, it's a very, very good question. Thank you so much. And I'm going to take my time to phase it out, because I think that the access to finance in Africa is very complex. And sometimes we try to always like simplifying to just saying, yes, those ideas are not bankable for XYZ reason. But I think that we really saw at Melanin Capital that there is a pattern on our continent. Basically, for most of the entrepreneurs that we see and that are coming to us for capital, they do have great ideas, but the first problem that they have is a lack of formalization and documentation. And this is because most of those entrepreneurs focused on making business, putting money on the table, so that they generate actually revenues, but maybe they haven't registered properly the name, or maybe they haven't protected the idea through a trademark or through a patent.
I'm going to pause you there as you continue. So it's more important for you to actually set up your company. Okay, you have two things. Setting up a company and structurizing everything involves, spending money.
Yeah.
But why would you spend that money when you could easily look for money and then do this later?
It's very, very unlikely that an investor is going to put money in you to start with. Like, it's very rare, and especially more in our African continent. Like, when you look at how the Silicon Valley, someone managed to raise funding just on a prototype, I think like you have to have in mind that this is an exception, not the rule. And in Africa, there is an additional risk that the investors are looking at, which is the country risk. They come from the perspective that when you come to Kenya, Uganda, or Senegal, or Nigeria, there is a risk that they can lose their money just based on the country situation, political situation or economic situation, for instance. So they will not give you money just for you to make a great idea. They need to see that, one, you have a great idea. Two, you have a business that is structured, registered, formal, paying taxes, having the right contracts with employees, a business that is almost unsuable, let's say. And three, they need to see that you are already making money. So this is very paradoxical, but I always explain entrepreneurs, like, once you have done the right step to be registered and formal, the second part is really traction, 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 traction. You cannot come to an investor and say, I haven't made any money yet, but thanks to your money, I'll be able to make more money. No, an investor is going to come because they are really convinced that they can multiply the money they inject in you by 2, 3, 4, or 5 in the next 5 years. And for this, they need proof. They need to showcase that you have been growing for the past 3 years or the past 2 years at an exponential rate, that every month you are increasing your revenues, every year you are making more profits or more margins. And this is how they can convince their own committee, so their own colleagues, that you can actually enable them to make more money thanks to their investment. So that's the very key thing.
Before you go to 3, I like to also understand, because like I said, I have ideas and I'm stepping into the shoes of everybody listening. So you say it's about making the money. Of course, some businesses could take 5 years without, making any profits or even break even. But what about expansion? That is growth in terms of money, or growth could also be in terms of, expansion in terms of creating more products. Sometimes the money might not come immediately, but if, for example, your idea is expanding and creating more products on the side, can that guarantee investment?
If you create more products, it's for clients. So if you can prove that those products can attract clients and hence revenues, it's not even just profits. You can be unprofitable, but at least you need to showcase that you are making revenues, that there is a market for what you're trying to actually build. So for example, I'm going to take a very concrete example. If you were actually cultivating mangoes, and you're telling me that you have the way to actually pair in your farm, you can cultivate mangoes, but at the same time, you can also cultivate pineapple. I have no problem with that. This is indeed expansion of products and services, but do you have a market for pineapples? who is your market for pineapples? Have you managed to prove that people are looking to buy your pineapples? And you can prove it even having, for example, a waiting list. So you go one day, you go from your suppliers, you've just delivered the mangoes, and you ask your supplier, can you, for example, make me a formal request that you want also pineapples, and how much pineapples do you want to buy, and for which price? That is tangible proof that you have actually a client for pineapple. And then you can come to the bank or to an investor and say, I want to expand my production, and I actually already have orders for pineapples. So then that makes sense. I don't say that it will automatically come into funding, but at least this is the right process to showcase that it's not only in your head, but it's a reality that you have a market for this. And I think that's a mindset that entrepreneurs need to have. Like, there's no investors that will give you money just for you to survive while developing your idea. You need to showcase that you have this business acumen, that when you have a product, it can be a tech product, it can be an agri product, it can be even a financial product, but there is a demand. There are clients that want your product, and they are willing to pay the price.
Wow. So it's just not about profitability. You just need to really find revenues. Okay, so those are two things we have to look out, especially for those trying to look for investors.
Yes, and then the third part is really to kind of filter your investor. Like, make sure that you don't waste your time talking to whatever investor. The very beginning, when we started Melanin Capital, a lot of entrepreneurs came to me and told me, yes, I talked to the World Bank, I've talked to the African Development Bank to raise like $20,000. No, those investors actually invest very large amount of money, like several dozens of millions. So if you're coming with a very small amount and in talking maybe to a director who works on financial services and you're an agripreneur, that cannot work. So you need to do the due diligence that investors are doing on you. You need to do it on them too. You need to understand, okay, is it the kind of investor I actually want to have in my capital? Is it the kind of bank that I think could help me or can understand my business? If you're an agripreneur and you're going to a bank that is focused on corporates, why do you think that this bank can help you? You need to go to a bank that is specialized also in agriculture, that can understand your life cycle, the difficulties with like production, and then the agricultural campaigns and so on and so forth. So I would say the third part, after you look at formalizing your business, looking at the traction, then the third part is really to target your investor and making sure you're not talking to someone that is completely irrelevant for your business.
Interestingly, as you were speaking, because I said I have some ideas too. And this one day, sometimes I love stories. I happened to pitch to 4 investors. Besides my journalism career, I also tried to run businesses. And, as you were speaking about doing due diligence on an investor, I felt like it hit home for me because I feel like the conversations never merged. The sector I was talking about is a sector they never understood. And it took me 2 days to actually sleep because I was thinking, this is a bogus idea. This is wrong. And, you try to call everybody, like many entrepreneurs. And I would like us to get on this later. And a friend of mine said to me, you need to check this guy out. You need to find out what they do. And I went to check out, how much money they have raised. And trust me, I moved on from that shock of, having to pay an investor who didn't understand my business, because I realized they never raised any amount of money for any entrepreneur. And in that moment, I feel like, actually, I should have checked them out before going for this meeting, because maybe there was a chance for me to even challenge them and be like, okay, you want me to tell you what I'm bringing to the table? What can you bring on the table? Exactly. What can you guarantee?
Exactly. And I think that, you see, not only you can save time by looking at that, but also like a lot of self-confidence, because those meetings are painful. Let's just be clear.
You can't survive them. It took me 2 days to recover. You absolutely cannot survive them.
Honestly, it's too tough. And I'm sorry you went through that experience, because although you learn through that, I also got my fair share of very disappointing meetings where you stay 2 days in bed and you think about your life from beginning to end, and you're like, what did go wrong? But to be very honest, it's just sometimes if you ask the wrong question or you talk to the wrong people, you can only get wrong answers, and you really need to spare you this kind of trauma.
Spare your sanity. Otherwise, you could actually, at some point I said, I need to put this on hold. I think I'm not ready. A lot of things go through your mind. But that brings me to a very important point, Melanin. Sometimes I feel like it's even harder when you're a woman. When you talk about confidence, for me, it comes back to the fact that you find yourself in a room of 5 men, asking one question, one after the other. And let's face it, it doesn't matter how confident you are, because I be on air all the time, but even after a decade of being on air, I still get butterflies. I still, get nervous the first 5 seconds when the clock starts, going 10, 9. I get that. And being in a room of 5 people, especially for a founder like you, or even being in a room where you have to convince CEOs or bankers that, you need to put money in these women, they're in the informal sector, but I can guarantee you they will bring in the money. That's a lot. That takes something. I'm speaking that from a woman, and it's not just to say that we're different. I think we're some of the strongest, gender I know on earth. They're just 2, but there's so much you go through. I mean, just give me an idea about that. I speak to a lot of female founder friends, and all they say to me is that, hey, Maggie, it's tougher than I thought. I think it's 5 times tougher than my male counterparts. Is that how it is for you? And how do you even deal with it?
Yes. So for me also, I learned it the hard way, because not only as an entrepreneur, but I was an investor before. And, the financial industry is just completely dominated by men colleagues, and especially when we look at the African continent. And that makes that a lot of women that dare to actually get in those rooms are usually the only women in the room. And that's what we need to change. It's slowly changing. So we have more and more, I think you may have seen funds that are fully focusing on female founders, like Arua Capital in Nigeria, or Africa Trust Group in South Africa. Us, we also have a very strong female angle. Actually, all our enterprises that we support need to either be women-led or employ a significant portion of women or serve women. So we focus on following this methodology, because we strongly believe that, as you say, women in our continent are actually the strongest gender, and they actually can bring a lot in the economic system if they are empowered. A big issue that I can see as a female founder, and it's also because I have a male co-founder, is that as women also sometimes we don't dare, just because this ecosystem is so hostile. Sometimes we feel very intimidated, and I can see it even just on in fundraising. There's an exercise that you need to do, which is valuing your company, giving a price on what you have done. And I would systematically, give a pricing that will be lower than what my co-founder would give. And this is just complete.
You're not alone. You're not alone. You are not alone. We're learning the hard way, but it's good to hear this from you, that you go through that, yeah?
I have no problem admitting it, because I'm learning so much into the process. And I've been always I think seeing myself smaller than any other man would see themselves in my shoes, and that's, I think there's two huge work that needs to be done in the ecosystem. Is of course, first, making sure that there are more women that are investors. directors of funds, of course, and like angel investors. So really empowering the women investors on our continent. And the second work is really it's a mindset work. I think that we need to have as women founders, maybe even leadership program for women that really kind of provide this confidence and this this support to just feel worthy, because there's a lot. And we can see it also in our cohort at the moment. Like there's a lot of women that like decrease their worth. And that doesn't help, because then when you go to an investor, and if you have a very tough investor, for example, in front of you, and they poke in the wrong holes, then you can really feel demotivated, and you can not fight as much as you should do to get that money. So I think that's where I find it very difficult, because of course, like, you are in an environment where you only meet a lot of men, and those men don't necessarily understand your perspective, or they don't understand your business, or they act differently as you were expecting to. And this just make it like a vicious circle, I would say.
But, it's true, because even, beyond even entrepreneurship, many times as you work in, the corporate world, you realize your male friends within the same office, same desk, probably they do less. You realize they earn more than you do, but you think that you actually earned really good money. Like, I feel like that was good money for me. But when I see what my friends earn, I'm like, no way, absolutely no way. I guess my question is like, how do you deal with that, within you? Because it's nice to learn from you. I mean, you've been here for quite some time. One of the things I do when I go to these meetings, somebody said to me, if whatever you want to do is a certain amount, add a 30%, and maybe add an 80%, add a 70%. This is something you hear all the time. One thing I always do is that as long as there is, for me, impact is the first thing, and then then the profit comes later. But I know a lot of people say the money will have to come first, because I'm working towards this. But one way I deal with such situations is maybe pray, look into and understand. You can never tell how much somebody is going to give you. And many times I've been paid more than I ever thought I would be. Many times I've been exploited. I can attest to this, even now. I find myself being exploited, and I'm thinking, oh, what happened here? But you can't reverse that. How do you deal with that?
Really, I feel so much what you're telling me. I feel like I was in your shoes when you were in those situations.
I feel like I'm still in those shoes. Even until now, there are contracts I look at, I'm like, there is absolutely no way I'm doing this for this amount. But because there's already that commitment. And a lot of times people say, it's for a start. It's giving you this. And because we are so caring, you want to do the work, you want to see the results, you want to see the impact.
Exactly, yeah.
You forget that part that, there's a value behind you. And this is me. It's not just the work, but it's my entirety and all the time I have to put in.
No, absolutely. And basically, like for now, I would say it's still a work in progress for me, but I'm trying to do it two ways. The first one, I've done a lot of work with like coaches and also with mentors who are strong, powerful women. Try to learn from them and try to work on myself to kind of have this I don't know, another perspective on who I am, how do I value myself, and how can I actually a bit balance it in my mind, because it's really a mindset problem. Okay,
I agree.
So I'm working on it, and it's a daily fight, and I try to do my best through journaling, through discussing with my coaches and my mentees to see how I can change this mindset inside me. And the second part that I'm doing is when it comes to value or like contracts, prices, invoices, I don't naturally trust my gut. So I do a lot of consultation. I'm an investor, so I spend on due diligence. I'm going to ask my board advisors, especially my main board advisors. I'm going to ask my co-founder, of course, because he's very, very supportive, and he's the kind of man who actually uplift women and can really tell you, like, this is how much you should aim for, because this is how much you're worth. You are valuable, and you have to have it in your mind. So he helps me a lot on that. I consult with similar peers in the industry who are men and who had similar contracts, and just I make a comparison. And I don't reply right away when someone tells me, okay, this is the job, this is how much it is, or this is the value that I can offer. I say thank you, I will get back to you. And then I do my whole consultation and due diligence. And once I see where actually the value should be, then I give a reply. Because before, I used to like always accept and think, as you said, this is a start, and I'm young and I need to learn, and this is okay because maybe I'm not as qualified or something like that. But now, not anymore. I really try to avoid doing so.
Yeah, so you have got to find the strength within your support system, which I really like, because I think a lot of women sometimes even asking is also a challenge.
Yes.
You're like, where do I even start? But I think it's very important to have mentors. So, also one of the things I hear from a lot of entrepreneurs is about building a proper team. Somewhere I've read in the books, you are as good as your team.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that?
It's a challenge. Building a team is I think the most difficult part. Like, it's not even just fundraising. It's really building a team that at the beginning, especially when you start or when you don't have a lot of resources, you have to have team members that maybe come voluntarily initially or come with a very low pay. So it's all about the character of the person, and not really like how much do you incentivize to work for you, So I think that building a team for a startup or for a young business is like the first challenge that you have to overcome in the journey. For us, of course, we relied a lot on our network of Ian and myself, family network, friends network, colleagues network, anyone that we had a very strong trust by working with them or by growing with them. And when we tell them about the project of Melanin Kapital, then if they are convinced by the idea and if they also embrace the mission, then they propose usually to come on board, and we try to make the conditions as viable as possible. But it's definitely like more about how do you inspire other people to work for a mission and not work for the money, and that's what is very, very difficult to do.
And that seems to be very rare even lately. I don't know who wants to work for visions. Like, everybody wants to have their own empire.
Yeah. This is another thing. So how do you create the new jobs of the 21st century, which are not jobs where you have like your job description and you just do what you have to do? Like, as you said, most people now want to have their own empire.
Talk about that. Yeah. How do you do that?
So for now, like what we're trying, like one of the values of Melanin Kapital is actually in entrepreneurship and intrapreneurship. So we try to make sure that we provide ownership for people that work with us. So this is like something that a lot of startups look at. How do you provide, for example, stock options or like shares of the business to your employees so that they can also feel part of Melanin Kapital? How can you empower them with like leading a project and feeling also like the entrepreneurs inside Melanin Kapital and achieving greater impact through what they want to do, so that it's not a story of like two co-founders and employees, but it's like actually 12 co-founders working together to achieve the goal of Melanin Kapital, which is to build today the Africa we want tomorrow. So that's really that's really how we're trying to go about it. But as a lot of young businesses, this is a work in progress. And I think that we all collectively need to think about how we can make work and jobs something that benefits the employees as much as the founder, like not a capitalistic approach, but more of like a way to share ownership and to share this empire so that everyone feel empowered and feel as an entrepreneur. Because I don't think that we have a lot of young people that want to be like our parents, work for the same company for 35 years in the same role and retire. I think that's over.
And I guess as the saying goes, I hope it's right, you cannot have your cake alone. Is that how it goes? Like you can't want to have 100% of ownership. You've got to exactly. Did it and see how people become over your own empire. Honestly, Melanin, there are so many things to dive into. For me, for once, when you're speaking about how you handle your team and all of these, one of the things that come to mind is what really drives you. What really drives you when you wake up in the morning and you have to face all these women founders coming to you or banks. What goes on to your mind? And waking up in the morning to do this is also another challenge. What keeps you going?
It's a very deep question. I think that, to understand my drive, you have to go back to like Mélanie, the little girl, I would say, because I grew up, I'm actually from a mother who is half German, half French, and a father who is Malian fully, but Congolese national. And I grew up in a village as the only Black girl in the town. So I really grew up as a stranger in my own country. And I've always thought and told my parents that one day I'll go back to Congo at the time and like actually build my own business there and stay with my family, which was majority in Congo. So I grew up with that kind of idea in mind. And when I got 21, I actually got to Congo for the first time, met my grandfather for the first time, met a lot of cousins and aunties and uncles for the first time. And I saw like the potential of Congo Brazzaville at that time. And I saw like what's basically being in France and being so far, I felt super powerless. And I thought that we needed, like the privilege that I had growing there, I needed to do something and I needed to find a way for us to be reunited, not for 20 years to see each other, but to grow up together, share stories together, share moments together. And for this, I needed to contribute to building these homes, to building back these countries with my family, like building our future together. So that's basically why I've always wanted to be involved on like financing the next projects that I felt had an impact on the continent, because I was strongly believing that there are resources in Africa so much and so much more than anywhere else in the world. Entrepreneurs have great sources of to drive economic change, but they need finance. And that's why I started as an investor. As an investor, I saw that there is still a huge gap because of the way that our entrepreneurs are designed, let's say, or how they have designed the enterprises and how the investors do their process. And there's this mismatch that I decided to dedicate my life solving, let's say, because I strongly believe every day that one day I'll make it and will be able to build this house that I'm seeing, hopefully in Dakar, and we'll be all together. And that's really like strongly driven by my own personal story. And I know that for my co-founder, he also has his own personal story from Kenya, and that he also wants to achieve. And everyone at Melanin Kapital has this story about how much they want to support back home and how much they want to improve the situation of their loved ones. And that's all how we kind of got together and see how we could achieve it bit by bit, basically.
I honestly like this story because there is no better time for Africa to rise than now. I mean, there's so much happening, and sometimes I'm like, you don't want to be left out of that ship. And ultimately, this is why we even have a podcast like this to be able to learn from people like you. I mean, there are a lot of people doing awesome things like yourself, but understanding the dynamics, challenges, or even opportunities is always very important. Melanin, you talked about having all these female entrepreneurs on your platform, but also the investors and the connections you've built. I've been reading about you, and your network is really, really huge. One of the things that has stood out, also speaking to a lot of entrepreneurs, has been, finding partnerships, getting those platforms. Even us speaking now, this is a platform that is really amazing for any entrepreneur. How do you find these, or how do you deal with this? Of course, you have a business, you've set it up, you're probably making revenues. But at the end of the day, communication is very important. Your business needs to be out there, either at an exhibition, at a conference, or at a podcast or somewhere. How do you deal with this?
Yeah, so actually the first steps are quite easy, and again, COVID helped here paradoxically. But for me, like to look at partnerships and increase the network, I really, really worked hard on LinkedIn. So this is why even like in the platform that we have a specific course on like networking on LinkedIn, just because this is a very powerful tool that can help any entrepreneur that has an internet connection.
Check my LinkedIn just now to see if I'm actually as good.
Exactly. No, and it's just like you can connect thanks to LinkedIn to actually I connected with you yesterday, like from another country, another sector, completely different, but like, then this is a way for us to continue the conversation, see if there are synergies and work together towards our goals. So I think LinkedIn is a very great tool to start with. And from LinkedIn, I got indeed invited to some events. And when you go to events, then this is where you can share your story and meet other people that can be interested in your story. But I would really say that if you have today, like in the digital world, you need, I actually don't even know how to do it, to say it in French, but not in English, like the shopping window. So the first thing that we see is going to be your LinkedIn profile or your Instagram or Facebook profile or Twitter profile. That's your shopping window. That's my shop, Mélanie Keïta. This is who I am. This is what I've done. This is my business. My business has its own shopping window. That's what Melanin Kapital does. And this is very important for people because this is contributing to, again, build trust. People hear more about what you do. They see that you exist. They see other people talking about you, and they will feel that you are legit, or they will feel that they learn or they know you a bit better. So they'll be more inclined to then at some point down the line give you money.
I'm sorry, my LinkedIn actually looks quite okay. Thanks for that tip. But so I guess one thing we have noted out of this is that work on your LinkedIn.
Yes.
Because from there, you will connect with the rest of the world. I guess a lot of people don't really see the value in some of these social media pages, rather platforms. I hear a lot of friends say to me, it's too much, social media out there, and sometimes you don't know what people are talking about. But I'm guessing from hearing from you, you have to pick strategic platforms, for example, LinkedIn, to be able to connect. And I'm glad, because the first thing I did was check you out on LinkedIn as well to see, let me see some of the work she's done and try to understand, a bit further. But you also had mentioned about working with over 300 female founders. And I guess for me, it's like, how do you even find these women? I have been doing business journalism for quite some time across Africa. And one of my biggest challenges has been finding women contributors. And I always say it's not because they're not there. They are there. But sometimes it's hard to connect. And when you go to companies and you even say, I want to speak to so-and-so, it's very rare they will give you a woman. It's until you say, I need to speak, or it's until you do a story that you realize the story doesn't have any woman. We need to change that. We need a woman. So it feels like 300 is quite a good number that if I had, I wouldn't ask for women for the next 5 years in my stories. But how do you find these entrepreneurs and how do they become part of this? What is the entire process?
So how we did it, like we basically launched a full campaign in collaboration with APSA Kenya. So we went out there also on TV and we went on social media. But even through this, we actually gathered around 110 women through this campaign. Yeah. So then what we did, and I know it's not going to sound very sexy, but then we went to LinkedIn and we went to...
Okay, so it's all about LinkedIn, honestly.
It's all about this. And we went in every group that were called Nairobi Entrepreneurs, Women Entrepreneurs Nairobi, Women Circles, etc., etc. And we went on all those groups and we friended all the women one by one and invited them to the project. And so we did this to 400 women and we got at least 200 more that came to the program. So really it's not, I can't give you like a perfect magic trick. Sometimes you really have to dig very deep and go one by one, literally go to that woman's profile, say, oh, okay, I like her business, I invite her to the program, etc., etc. And like for me, I'm trying to now be as much present as possible into all the women groups. So I'm part of 100 Women in Finance. We're going into all the groups, especially virtual groups on LinkedIn on women entrepreneurs in Nairobi, women entrepreneurs in Kenya, women circles, in Kenya. You're trying to find groups and to connect with the great women change makers that are there. And for us, we want to specifically understand their challenges, understand what is going wrong for them and how we can solve them, the most of their challenge. So that's what we do.
I mean, as we go ahead, I think let me take a few seconds out of this podcast to ask our listeners to probably, those who don't have a LinkedIn account, to open one.
Yes, absolutely.
Or work on it and, be able to rebrand it and make it more appealing. So I'm guessing this is where we're getting most partnerships and, most deals. I never really thought about it. I always felt like LinkedIn is so serious. When you're in media, Twitter is more real time. It's like breaking news. This happened out. But to be honest, I feel like I've also got more, not just partnerships, but I've got more deals or more people I've worked with on LinkedIn than any other platform. So I quite agree with you on that one.
I think that, of course, depending on the business you are, like social media platform can help in one or another. Like I think for especially like shops, for example, Instagram is awesome.
The best.
Because, it's the best. You can have your own shop and it's very visual and so on and so forth. For journalists, being very active on Twitter is the best because this is the place to be. But as a finance entrepreneur, I think like for me, LinkedIn is the way that it works better for me because also it's easier to search the different groups. It's easier to search even the different sectors. So I quite enjoy it. But I've seen even entrepreneurs managing amazing crowdfunding platforms on Facebook. So it's really like try to find your niche. Who you want to work with, where do they go, what is their habits, and then try to be there where your clientele or your financiers are. Most of investors are on LinkedIn. I'm not going to lie. I
am going to LinkedIn immediately after this podcast. I am telling you. But interesting because from my understanding and speaking to you and other entrepreneurs, it feels like there are a lot of mistakes entrepreneurs do, especially when it comes to their businesses, and marketing is one of those, or communication, because you don't know where to go. For me, I think one of the things I've picked today has been being able to not profits, but, revenues, but most importantly, put the business together, forget chasing the money and put structures in place, because that then takes away from its informality to actually make it a structured business that can bring in the money. But you've worked with all these entrepreneurs as an investor now, as an impact investor with your own company. I guess my question is, what are some of those mistakes you've seen a lot of entrepreneurs do, but also founders, especially when we talk about these 307 women that you work with, when you talk about all these meetings you sit in, seeing all the people that pitch their ideas, what are the common mistakes they do?
Yeah, so apart from the one that we already said, the structures and so on and so forth, I think the big issue that we see is presentation, how to present your project. So as an entrepreneur, you can be very passionate about what you do and very expert about what you do, and then you're going to get lost into details, maybe take a lot of time to pitch, like a 20-minute pitch instead of like a 5-minute pitch. You don't have necessarily a storyline that links your business and your activities all together, and this is where you lose investors, basically, because an investor he wants to understand your project and where you're from in 5 minutes, and then he's going to have follow-up questions and dig deeper, and he needs very straight and very concise answers, and not to go into the details of like the how, the why, the what, etc., but really kind of if they ask you, okay, so where do you expect your revenues to be at the end of 2022, he accepts a number and accepts to, like, for example, have a logic behind. So we are planning X sales, and given the price that we are charging at the moment, then we should have revenues at Y, but it has to be very, very to the point. And the story that you're telling, like, you need to be able to like showcase your strength in 5 minutes and in a way that flows well together. So that's why, like, one of the big support that we have in the platform is about storytelling, presentation to investors, because when you have your house in order, so everything is structured, you have already the traction. Now, what is missing is how do you convince an investor that this is the opportunities for them and that they have to give the money? It's through a good story and a very sharp presentation to those investors.
So you're tell a story and no one cares about too much information. Keep it simple.
Yes.
And straight to the point.
Absolutely.
That's really interesting. I always say to people, it's never marketing, it's never communications, it's about storytelling. Even when you're in the media and sometimes you do a story, you just feel like this doesn't cut it out, because in every story, there's always something that is, unique. And I feel like even businesses, and even when I speak to entrepreneurs many times, I feel like, tell me your story. Like, don't tell me your business, but tell me your story. Exactly. And if you can tell me your story in a minute, it's even the better, because I get curious, then I'm going to want to know more. But I think that's something really very good to learn from you. I mean, as a storyteller, every day is telling stories. For me, I find myself telling stories even while in serious meetings. I'll go like, okay, let me tell you about this experience, because I feel like that is more relatable,
Absolutely.
more than just saying this is what we want to do or take this away. Mélanie, what is your typical day like? I hear a lot of people say, if you don't wake up at 5 a.m., you just can't be successful. You don't have the 72-hour rule. Have you heard of that?
Yeah,
you
of course.
can't be successful. If you don't have this, you can't be successful. I'm going to be honest with you. I used to do 5 a.m., but I think after COVID, I can do 8 a.m. waking up. And I realized it doesn't matter what time you sleep or wake up. You just, for me, this is my own perspective. You just got to have your priorities in order. I know friends who say to me, if I'm not up by 5, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm sure, and you've probably read that Mark Zuckerberg wakes up at 7, Jack Dorsey 8, but another maybe, I don't remember who it was, does 5 a.m. It's the CEO of Amazon, the founder of Amazon. He wakes up, 4 a.m., 5 a.m. So, there are all these stories in Forbes and everywhere. Are you one of those people? Is there anything that distinguishes between?
I wish, but I'm really not a morning person. I've tried. I've really tried to put my alarm at 5 a.m., but I usually, my ideal timing to wake up is 8, to be fair. Like I haven't, I would lie to you if I told you I managed to do earlier. It's very, very rare. And unless I have a meeting in Nairobi, for example, that is at 10, and then in Europe it's 8 or it's like 9 to 7. But otherwise, I usually wake up at 8. I try to never skip meals. So this is very important to me. I make sure that we have breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So I usually start with if I manage to do sports. So in an ideal scenario, I do spinning. This is biking with like YouTube videos. Then I do yoga. Then I do my breakfast. I shower. And then I start with all my calls. I usually have a lot of calls until 3 p.m. Then at 3:30, 4 p.m., we start with the master classes for the entrepreneurs of Melanin Kapital. So then I give class with like the other trainers and so on. And then I finish at 5:30. Then we go towards like actually doing the work, because so far I've been doing a lot of calls. I haven't worked on any documents, especially if I need to do like funding applications, if I need to work on certain concepts, or if I need to prepare a class for the next day. So after 5:30, I start actually working. I eat again at like 8, and in general, I finish work, which is not good and not advisable, but around like 2 or 3 a.m. And then I start the next day.
Okay. Now that you sleep for less than 7 hours, this was going to be another question. One person has said to me, you have to sleep 8 hours to be able to do business. But again, it's different dynamics in your case and all of that. No, I know entrepreneurs who ask me that, how many hours should somebody sleep? But I guess it doesn't really matter, does it?
I think it's better to sleep 7 to 8 hours. Like I'm telling you, we're going to have a break next week. I think I'm going to sleep around 14 hours a day, for at least 3-4 days. I'm just like, you can see my eyes. I was just like tired. But on weekends, I try to work a little less. I don't work on Saturdays, and on Sunday I work, but I don't work overnight. And I'm trying now to put a break at like midnight. So I'm trying to, if I have to go beyond midnight, it's really because there's something super urgent. But my resolution for 2022 is definitely to sleep at least 7 hours a night.
We're going to have you back on this podcast one day, and we will try to find out about that. I mean, with entrepreneurship also comes with a lot of sacrifice. I am telling you, it's scary some days. And I can't say I'm a full entrepreneur, full blast, like I'm doing this or that. No, I actually get to do at least some work that I know will bring in incomes. And I had a chat with a friend of mine who's been doing this for 7 years, and I said, I don't know. I now respect entrepreneurs more than ever, because I don't understand how you keep up with the uncertainties. And, on top of thinking about your personal life, you have to think about people, you have to think about a team, you have to think about finances, you have to think about all of these things. It's so much for an individual to take in. So, and I read this thread on Twitter of a lot of entrepreneurs from Nigeria who were saying, if I was to advise my child, I would tell them not to be an entrepreneur. It was a big debate. And others are like, no, I would actually advise them to, to be one, because of your freedom and all of the things. But I guess there's always something that drives everybody. And, it's about for a common good of probably the continent or the sector you're in. Of course, in this particular season, we've interviewed 2 people in the agriculture space. Much as we want to learn from you, I always feel like I want to give people hints of the opportunities or some of the things we see out there. I tend to ask this question a lot. Because I also feel like with entrepreneurship comes an opportunity beyond just wanting to create impact. It's because there is a gap. With a lot of people you've worked with in the past couple of years, what sectors have been most exciting? And if I sat here and I said, Melanin, I have ideas and I think I want to get into funding, but I feel like education is a bit missing, or, I feel like I want to raise capital, or actually, I love the media. And we're so talented that you have skills and ideas on every sector, and sometimes it gets so confusing. If I asked you right now and I said, look, I want to get into entrepreneurship, but I don't know which sector to get into. For me, I'm seeking an opportunity. What would you say to me?
So I have two pieces of advice on that. The first one, look at the mega trends, okay?
Yeah.
In Africa at the moment, I think, and I always repeat a bit the same sentence, but Africa is facing a triple challenge at the moment, which is climate change, inequalities, rising inequalities, especially between gender and generations, and the COVID-19 recovery. So how do you become COVID-19 resilient, basically? So you can see that if you have an idea that is either solving a climate change issue, be it in agriculture, energy, transport, or so on and so forth, you will have much more possibilities to be relevant and to get funding. If you have an idea that helps to reduce inequalities between men and women, between youth and older people, between people with disabilities and people without, then you will be able to also be relevant and get access to funding. Lastly, if you also have a business that can be COVID resilient, so have a digital approach, have a way to strengthen healthcare systems in Africa, then you also become relevant and you also can get access to funding. So those are the mega trends I would definitely look at for. By starting the business. And at Melanin Capital, this is our, let's say, our sectorial focus. Then the second part is choose to do a business where you're very good at, or then you have to find a co-founder, let's say. So personally, I worked in the financial industry. My background is in finance and sustainable development. I chose to do a business that was on my skills. For my co-founder, he's not a finance person per se, but he's a business person. So for him, working with entrepreneurs also makes a lot of sense. And this is where he can use his strength to support them. And he's an engineer, so he understands technology and can support on building the technology infrastructure. So that's for me key. It's very difficult for an investor to put money into a business in someone that has no understanding or no experience into that sector. If you are a couple of co-founders, or if you have 3 co-founders, there could be just one person out of the 3 that has deep experience, and the rest of the co-founders have good skills in marketing and communication, for example, or finance and technology, so on and so forth. But very important to build a team that is experienced and knowledgeable into that sector. So that would be my 2 pieces of advice, look at that of mega trends and how you can fit into that. And second, make sure that you go into a sector or an idea that you really, really master.
You're really passionate about as well, because then you can wake up to live it, to think it, to walk it, I think that's very, very important. Melanin, I noted down financing for women because I know we talked about raising finance, but on a broader scale. Through my entire experience of traversing this continent, east, south, north, and central, and west, where I am, I tend to forget where I am, but one of the things is financing. And there have been actually banks that have been set up. I know in East Africa there's in Kenya, there's a bank for women and all.
Kenya Women Trust Bank, yeah.
Exactly. In Uganda, I know there's a bank called Finca. There are a lot of banks everywhere. I know in Senegal, I've heard of a bank. I need to be sure, so I can't just say it. But I've heard of different banks or organizations that have been set up especially to help women raise financing. As you mentioned, one, we undervalue ourselves. Two, the confidence. It's not that we don't have it. Trust me, we're the most confident Christians. Like if you're put in a hard situation, you're probably gonna get out of there. But it's like there is still that huge gap when it comes to financing. I can't even say, is it gender financing? Because that is not a term that exists. But there's a huge gap when it comes to financing for women vis-a-vis maybe the men or, different people. But again, I think for me, the question is, it's not even a question. I just want to pick your thoughts on this. Even when you go to these women, for example, to ABSA or to other banks across that you work with, or even to investors, of course, this challenge is there. But how do we overcome it? And obviously, there are companies or platforms like yours that are helping to bridge this. But what about for the founders that haven't really got to these platforms? Is it different from the experience of others, or is it the same scenario that we're going through?
I have to say I can mostly talk for those that I know through our platform, but like what we've seen for especially the women that are enrolled into our program, 70% had no access to finance before, like not even a loan or a capital, nothing. So the idea was to understand mostly why. The biggest challenge is the demand of collateral. So, like a lot of time when banks want to invest in you, they will ask you if you have collateral to guarantee the loan. So, for example, it can be a land, it can be a house, it can be, if it's a small loan, it can be your car, so on and so forth. So a big problem of these entrepreneurs is that they didn't have access to finance, mostly because they didn't have access to collateral, or they didn't pass the first steps of the due diligence of the banks. So what we've worked on with them is to first to go through a pathway to finance that we call Tungane, which in Swahili means let's connect. So this is a fundraising. Yes, this is a fundraising pathway where we start by training entrepreneurs through the different aspects of fundraising. So what are the prerequisites? How do you register a business, or what are the legal requirements? We also give them access, of course, to the experts that come into the platform. So for example, yesterday we had the legal course, and there's a lot of entrepreneurs that needs trademarks, that need support for registration, that needs support on the taxation. So now our lawyers are supporting them to put all of this together through the platform. They have other courses on marketing, communication, storytelling, technology. So for example, businesses that don't have a website or way to continue working in case of lockdown, we give them access to tools that don't need a developer, so which is called no-code tools, to just implement this technology. So through this first phase, they learn all about it. They apply it into assignments, which we hosted into another step, which we call the lab. So in the lab, they basically upload documentation, everything they've been working on during the academy part, they applied to the lab. So this helps us to then collect the data, collect the documentation, and kind of prepare the work that ABSA would have needed to do in case of a due diligence. And then the third phase, we help those entrepreneurs connect with each other, trying to build partnerships, trying to see if they can sell even more products or have additional orders for the years to come, so that their applications for a loan looks even much better. Like we can see that cash flows and revenues will increase in the future. So that's the third step. And then the last step is the financing. And so the financing is based on all the previous steps. We have collected this data. We have audited this data internally and with the help of PwC, and we just present it to ABSA. And then ABSA can just make the analysis and disburse the loan. And this loan is guaranteed by a third party, by the African Guarantee Fund. So if the entrepreneur doesn't pay back the loan, it's the African Guarantee Fund that will pay back ABSA on their behalf, which means that then ABSA doesn't need the collateral anymore. So this is how we solved the collateral problem. And through the process, we solve the due diligence problem. So that's basically how we're trying to go about it, because we've seen those challenges and those barriers, and we just try to put a process to solve it.
Wow, that's quite interesting. I'm going to ask you this question before we get a little bit closer and personal with you, with a few questions. But I always say, I would rather get some tips, tricks, and advices from you. And at this point, I can't say just women, because I feel like the world has also become, to some point, not a one gender, but like we say, he for she, what a woman can do, a man has got to do. And I know even for a lot of people probably listening right now, they might have a lot of questions. Unfortunately, we can't take them live. So I'm trying to put myself in their shoes. If you were to give me three tips, not to be successful, of course, at the end of the day, you want success, but you want to build a business, like sustainability. Like you want to be able not to just make money and get out, but you want to be able to create impact at the end of the day. I want to seek advice on behalf, or putting my shoes in some of the entrepreneurs out there. What are some of the things to consider? Of course, we've talked about financing, we've talked about sleeping hours, we've talked about all of these things, confidence. But if you were to give me three tips on an entrepreneur starting out, and I'm going to ask this because, especially in the agriculture sector, because this episode and some of the people we've spoken to have, and OYA mostly works with agripreneurs. If you were to give me three tips or three things to live by as a farmer, as an entrepreneur, probably developing a technology for farmers, or as somebody, setting up a farm or buying land, and as advice, free advice from an impact investor like you, what are some of the things you would give me, three tips to live by, to move my business from just an idea to a business, to probably be able to even raise capital?
Mm-hmm. Okay. So the first tip, so the three tips, the first one would be work on your business mindset. The second would be...
that's for the farmers.
But work on your business mindset. The second would be ensure that you are well surrounded. So choose well your team. And the third one would be try to go beyond the traditional pathway of your business. And I'm going to explain like each of them. So the first one on work on your business mindset is also because I have a lot of entrepreneurs, especially in agriculture, that comes to me and think that there is help that was going to come. It's very rare that someone comes just to help you. Like there's definitely like donors, and they are out there, but they have very specific mandates, and you need to come up with the opportunities. If you come at, well and good, but work as if those opportunities will never come. Okay, just like make sure that even if those opportunities don't come, you still have a business and it's still running and it's still growing. So work on your business mindset. How can you sell more? How can you find like a way to serve your customers better? What are your customers looking for? And how can you like leverage on what you have, your land, your production, and how can you leverage on what you have to just make it better? Okay. That's the first thing on the business mindset. The second thing about surround yourself nicely. I have a lot of entrepreneurs, and even more so in agriculture, that have I call them voices around them that are very negative, very toxic, not helping them to grow, basically. It's not helpful. Like you need people that support your journey, or at least don't put you down, because being an entrepreneur is hard enough. You don't need people around you, big friends, family, employees that actually always put barriers into your mindset. If you're really dedicated to do this business and you're not halfway, then it's okay, go full on and go with positive attitude and a positive vibe and people that support you towards it. And the third point was focused on I've lost it. Making sure that you don't do it the traditional way. So a lot of models that we have are from the Western world, but Africa is a different market. And the businesses that manage to succeed in this market, it's always when they tried to find different ideas. For example, M-Kopa, that you know already in Kenya, that has not decided to do energy the same way that we do in Europe through the grid and so on and so forth, but more like bringing solar panels and you pay only what you use to pay back the solar panel. This helps a lot of Africans from the most destitute families to actually have electricity and own a solar panel at the end of the day. If you look at the business models of like Twiga Food, if you look at the business models of some farms that actually did not only produce, for example, fruits, but maybe produced also electricity at some point, like you have to see how you can look at different ideas, different innovations in your field to kind of like bring your own success, because it's not by using the traditional and the way that you've seen everyone like failed into that you will necessarily succeed. So you really have to rethink.
Think out of the box.
Think out of the box, exactly.
What do you do? Because a lot of times you get to that point where you probably want to get into employment. I don't know if you've faced that before, or where it's like, oh my God, it's just too much. I'm gonna let this go. At the time when you're about to give up, what do you usually do? What helps you go ahead?
I have to say, like, because I was in employment before, like I'm really not, I've given my time like kind of a time where I would really dedicate myself to my business. I've saved for it. I've given, like, I've made a plan. So for now, like I don't contemplate employment, but it's true that sometimes it's just a bit too much, because as you said, you also have to have a personal life. You trying to like take care of yourself, take care of a business. You work 6 or 7 days a week. You don't sleep much. So sometimes you just like need a full break. So it's like I call them the nothing day. So I just stay on my bed. And, I don't try to do anything useful, especially nothing useful. I even order food if I have to survive, but I don't cook, I don't clean, I don't know anything useful, because I just need my brain to be on off mode. And of course, like I'm trying to now give myself a little bit more break, because this kind of mentality when you're like, I can't do it anymore, is because you're overtired, you're overworked, you're almost burning out. So this is where you need like a big stop, and you take time to even, I like to walk in the nature, like just go into a park, a forest, fields, or the sea if you have the chance, and just think about nothing at all, nothing business related. You
Netflix and chill, or take your coffee and have the walks. That's very interesting. Trust me, I think everybody's looking forward to the time when they have to take a break. But I think as an entrepreneur, it's very important. Otherwise, you work too much and then you burn too much. This has been really so exciting, and I have a few personal questions, a bit up close, because I think it will be it would be kind of cheating if we don't get to know you beyond the business. Who inspires you?
So I have to say that Dambisa Moyo is my greatest inspiration. I've not yet finished her book, Dead Aid, but every page, every word I'm reading, I'm just feeling mind blown and just in full agreement. And it's just so inspiring to also read an African woman talking about Africa, you know, and not someone external telling the story. And kind of also having such a documented book about how economic development happens in other regions and how we are actually having the wrong idea about how to do it in Africa. So I have to say, like, I'm super, super inspired, not only by her book, but also by her path, you know, like she's studied at Oxford and Harvard, and she's seated in the most and highest positions in the largest banks in the Western world. Her path is absolutely unbelievable. So she's one of my greatest inspiration.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So coffee or tea?
Oh, tea. I don't drink coffee at all.
What? You are French. How French, Congo? I mean, that's coffee. That's the coffee world.
I know, but I don't know, like coffee does something to me. Like it just makes my heart goes faster. I can't. Actually, I stopped coffee when I came to Kenya because
I was going to say that your co-founder probably introduced you to the tea. You know, Kenya has all the tea. It's just like,
yes.
You probably learned the tea from Kenya. Interesting.
And I love Kenyan chai. It's so good.
Tell me about it. Tell me about it. You should try the London one. Not just to put that in, but so let's say you're going for our meetings. High heels or flats?
High heels. High heels, wax, African wax suit from A to Z. Or like like colorful dress with a huge Maasai necklace and big earrings and makeup and my afro. But
what role, and that brings me to probably my last question, what role does presentation of yourself really play in this entire, and this is interesting, you know, I'm so glad you mentioned on high heels or flats, because many times people say, I'm in Mark Zuckerberg wears one t-shirt. Who are you to go and do this horse shopping for? You know, but this is a conversation that is actually very interesting sometimes online, where some people will go like, the way you dress also reflects your business, or, you know, some people will judge you on that. How important is that?
For me, it's very important when I come in any room that everyone understands I'm a woman and I'm African, and I'm very proud of it. And I always make sure that I'm very, like, even if I'm overdressed, you know, in Germany, for example, people underdress a lot, but I would always overdress, and this is totally fine. This is part also of how my father has raised me. He has this Congolese sapeur culture in him, and he has always always wanted me to be like very, like, all the nail polished, the perfect, the makeup nicely, the best earrings, nice high heels. And it's something I adopted. I don't say it's something that every woman or every entrepreneur should do. Everyone has its own branding approach, because at the end of the day, this is your own personal branding. So even if Mark Zuckerberg comes with a t-shirt, that's his branding, his geek branding, and I respect it, but it's just I'm a totally different personality. I love dressing up, and I love African fashion, and I love educating people with it, because every time you're showcasing also the beauty of African fashion for any country, like Kenya has a lot on the Maasai culture. In Mali, we have Bazin. It's very, very important, I think, to just also showcase those beautiful pieces. And most of the time people ask questions, and then it's also a way for you to promote our beautiful cultures. So I love doing it. And yeah, that's just the way I brand also myself and Melanin Capital. And even my co-founder now is joining me. So when we go into meetings, we usually have some nice African touches to it.
I guess we can also say, Mark Zuckerberg has the right to wear his T-shirt. I mean, with billions of dollars on your account, you can wear whatever you want. But that's interesting to know. I mean, I think we have a role beyond just our businesses to also educate, but also put our culture out there, because at the end of the day, it's the beginning of sustainable development, understanding who we are and taking pride in that. And it's really nice. I am also one for one of overdress. Just do it however it pleases you. But I also keep saying that, let's not take what makes you. If what makes you is beyond T-shirts, go for it. If what makes you the flats, go for it. But I still believe that, not to be judgmental, a bit of dressing plays a certain, to a certain amount matters. Melanie, this has been so amazing. I personally have learned so much.
Thank you.
I guess I'm going to join these 307 women. It could be the 308 and see how I can be able to raise funding. So thanks a lot for having the time to speak to us. That was one amazing conversation. Trust me, we just have not had your story. But I think it's been educative and edutaining and entrepreneurial in a way. And I think it's also great to see women like you out there challenging the status quo. I mean, somebody has got to rep for us. And I feel like to a certain point, the African diaspora have such a big role to play. In some countries, there's even more Africans in the diaspora than in their countries of their own. But, bridging that gap is a very important factor. And seeing somebody miles away doing that, for me, is so tickling and it's amazing. Well done. I'm going to pause this a bit to call in Melika and the rest of the team to see if there's anything else we've forgotten. Oh, let me open it. Yeah.
Just like the last words, I just wanted to also thank you so much for this conversation, because I think it's also important that to note that these conversations are very empowering, just to be seen and exchange with a fellow African woman about like how she also felt. And I'm really grateful also for the OYA team to kind of showcase our stories out there, because it helps also for us to promote what we're doing and to share to potential partners, potential clients, potential investors, what is our vision and what do we stand for. So I really wanted to just thank you and express my gratitude to be here. And I hope that this is the start of amazing conversations going forward.
Oh, asante. In Rwanda, we say tuli kumwe. We're together in this.
Tuko pamoja.
Nice. Yeah, tuko pamoja. Oh my goodness, there are so many languages. So it's like Africa is an entire pool that you have to learn one from east to west. That's amazing. To be honest with you, one of the things I always say, for example, in my line of work in media is if it's not creating an impact, then don't do it. You have to, for me, it's like there has to be impact in the end. I know a lot of people who say, go big or go home. That's what I'm trying to live by. Because I'm like, when it comes to the monies and everything, I really want to go big. I want to stop playing small. But I don't know what really keeps you going, though, what you would leave us with.
For me, it can sound negative, but it's not. It's just, I always say, be stubborn and keep persevering, because although you can find challenges on the way, or people can deter you to do what you want to achieve, it's only by keeping working and without stopping that you will reap the fruit at the end. So keep being stubborn, keep being determined. That's the only way to make an impact.
I love it. It's just like how Steve Jobs said, only the crazy ones are able to, change the world. Thank you very much. Melika, I think it's your floor.
This has been the OYA Entrepreneurial Mindset Podcast. Tune in to stay up to date on each new episode for more inspiring stories. Share your entrepreneurial journey with us using the hashtag #WeNeedOYA. A link to our website and social media is available in the description of the episode.